Welcome back. So in today's video, I wanted to cover props. Props are great because basically they give you a way to make things a little bit more dynamic with your components. Without props, to be honest, I don't think you could really do anything useful with React. And so they're an essential part of what React is. So let's take a look at what we've got here. So as you can see, we've got this hello and we've got worlds. Let's just kind of take this back down to, let's just go back down to hello. So we're just running one component, okay? We'll get rid of world because we don't really need that, like so. Now if I just save this, as you can see up this side, if I just make that a little touch bigger, you can see that we've got hello. So the problem here is that this is quite generic. We might want to say hello and then somebody's name. So the way that we might like to do that is within our hello component just here, what we can do is we can say, give it a name. And then within that name, we basically want to say my name. If I just put in Richard just here. Brilliant. So that saves it and it passes it in. The problem is nothing's happening because we're not actually doing anything with it at the moment. So the way that we can fix that is if we go here where we actually define the component, we can basically say props. Once we've got props, that basically means that we can now replace this with something else, probably hello, and then we can put in our little squirrely brackets here and then do props.name like so. Let me just put that back out there. And as you can see, it now says hello Richard. Obviously if we was to change this to Fred, hello Fred, and so on, you get the idea with this, okay? Now there is one other part of this that's quite useful to know, and that is something that you'll see all the time, and that is destructuring. Destructuring is basically a way to shorten this. So instead of having props.name everywhere, you can just essentially put name here. The problem with this and the reason it breaks it is because it doesn't understand what name is. Name is on props and obviously it doesn't know where that is. So what we can do is we can pass in some brackets here. What this is essentially saying is whatever you pass in here, I want you to take off the name component. So if you think about it, you could actually pass in quite a few different things if you were passing in an object, for example, here, and then that way you could just take off what you need. And this is what destructuring is. If this is a little confusing, I can go over this further. But essentially, destructuring is just taking what you need out of what you've sent in. So in this example, I've sent in a payload which is called name, and it's got the value of Fred. So destructuring is just a way where you're basically saying this is the key, so it's name, this is the value, Fred, and then essentially you're just taking out name as the single thing, the single value that you want, and then you're just dropping it in here. It just saves you having props.this, props.that all the way through your code. It's just a little bit neater and it looks a bit more organized this way. The next thing to understand about props is that they're read-only. You shouldn't be modifying anything that you pass in to the actual component. What you need to do really, rather than modifying anything with props, is essentially just use the value and then make new variables if you want to change anything. So if you're computing something or if you're making a new name, for example, if you wanted to make all of this uppercase, then what you could do is you could say const my new name, and then you could basically do name to uppercase. And then obviously we could then do my new name. And you could do it like this, you see. So you're not actually modifying what's passed in, you're just modifying a new variable. So you're creating a new constant here, and then you're essentially saying convert this to an uppercase and then return it. It doesn't actually affect the value here. Nothing gets changed here. It just takes that value, creates an uppercase and returns it into my new name. So that's what you should do rather than modifying actual props that you pass in, because like I say, they're treated as read-only. So really that's all there is to props. It's just a case of you pass it in like this, and you can pass in a multitude of these. So if you wanted to go like age, and then pass in, say, 42. So 42 goes in there, that's my age. If I just put in my name here, we'll take this uppercase out, and we'll just do name here. So you could do name is, and then what you would do is you would say put age here, Now, because we need age in here, what we do is we can destructure it just like this. And as you can see, it says, hello, Richard is 42. Sad times. So this is how destructuring works. This is how you pass in different values. One thing to notice is that we're passing in the numbers as expressions. So obviously these are strings. This is an expression. You could even do an expression in the sense of you could do something like 5 plus 5. You could do that. Anything that that you can return from a function is essentially something that you can pass in here. You can actually also pass in functions. So if you had a function, I don't know, say if the function was called foo, you would pass it in this way. Now this isn't actually executing the function. This is essentially passing the function called foo down to this component here, and it would be in here like this. And then once you've passed the function in, you can essentially execute the function in a different component. This is kind of one way that we can handle things like passing data from the child up to the parent, because in React, data is one way. So you pass data down through props, but you can't pass data up through props, obviously. So the way that you would communicate with a parent is to basically pass down a function and then execute the function. But we'll get into that later with events. That's not really something we need to worry about right now. So this is the basics of props, and with that, we'll move on to the next one. Cheers.